definitely sprung. I was out in the garden just about 15 minutes ago weeding. Anybody done weeding before? Anybody enjoy weeding? Just give me a head nod. You want to come to my house? There's quite a bit of work to do. But nothing like doing weeding to keep you grounded in life. And with this beautiful weather, kids are outside playing. The flowers have actually sprung. I actually went past a nursery the other day, had a big sign. It said, "Thank God spring is finally here." I got so excited, I wet my plants. Some of you will get that soon. But it's a great energy to be in, and it's beautiful to be here. And I know Spirit is always around when we gather together and where there is more than one. So today I'd like to just share a little message with you that I was kind of inspired with Spirit during the week. And I have to admit, a year ago today, I was actually in India. For many years, I've been called on a bit of a spiritual journey. My ancestry has some Indian background in it. I'm Anglo-Indian, half English, half Indian. And for many years, I had this calling that I wanted to go back. There was something back in India for me to connect with. And as many of you know, when we start this spiritual awakening and we start our own journey, at various times we're going to be guided and given messages along the way. And so I must admit, over the last 5 years, I had different people turn up in my life, and many of them saying the same message. Les, you have to go to India. There's somebody waiting for you there to give you a message. You have to go visit the Golden Temple. And so last year, after much indecision, it was the right timing with Spirit. I'd finished up a contract with work. I decided to make that journey. And it was really a journey for my own soul. It was something that I needed to do. I didn't even take my partner who I was with at the time. But I felt I needed to go within and I needed to connect with something that was greater. And so I travelled around the country to various points. And at one point I was drawn to Rishikesh at the base of the Himalayas. Some of you may be familiar. It was the place that the Beatles went in the 1970s. They went to see Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of Transcendental Meditation. And it's where they really spent time at his ashram and wrote, in that time, 48 songs in that ashram. But I travelled all over Rishikesh, and before I left, a friend of mine said to me, Les, I also feel you need to connect with this place. I keep getting this centre you need to go to. It's called the Divine Light Centre. And so as soon as I heard that, something resonated in me. And I'm not sure whether you've ever had a time or a moment in your life where somebody has shared something with you and it resonated. Has anybody had that experience? Just give me a head nod or a wave. Yeah. And we as human beings on this spiritual path need to pay attention to those times where we feel that energy, where we feel that connection. And I looked up this place and I looked up the founder of it, who was a man by the name of Sri Swami Sivananda, who was a medical doctor back in the early 1930s. And he founded this ashram and this group of people and was spreading spiritual truth. And when I listened to his words on YouTube, because there's still videos of him talking from the 50s and the 30s and sharing his wisdom, it was almost like a shiver went through me and I knew I had to go to this place. So when I arrived last year and after travelling around Rishikesh, went for a little bit of a journey in the Himalayas, came back down, I finally found his ashram, and the ashram itself is quite deserted these days. Lots of the devotees have gone. His presence is still around, but it was quite empty. And as I was walking around the ashram, I sat down, and there in front of me was this kind of monument, a bit of a pillar, and it simply had 5 words, which summarised the whole philosophy that he believed in terms of self-realisation. Self-realisation being that pathway to discovering more of our true self, that pathway that leads us to a greater connection with our source, with God, the universe. And you may want to write down these 5 words because they were very simple. The first one was love. The second one was serve. The third one was trust. The fourth one was meditate. And the fifth one was realise. And I began as I sat there, and there was no one else around, because like I said, this ashram is quite deserted, asking myself this: is the path to spiritual fulfillment, that everything we've always been searching for in our hearts, is it really that simple? Is it really that basic that it comes down to just 5 words? And yet, how many of us know that in Western culture, we go around looking for the more complex? And the more complex it is, we believe that that's truth, that that's reality. So it's quite an awakening for me. And the reason I share that with you today is that we have all been on a path of awakening. I'm not sure how it is that you have turned up here in this Zoom meeting room today. But I can tell you this, there's absolutely no coincidence you're here. At some part of your energy, your soul and your spirit, your guides that work with you, those who have passed over, has guided you here, maybe to hear one word, maybe to get one message from our medium today. But whatever it is, you're here for a purpose. And so I felt Spirit want to share this, that this consciousness we're opening up to, and I know some of you have been on the journey for a long time, some of you are just starting, maybe it's your first time today connecting with a spiritualist philosophy. But what I do know is this, that the research has shown that at the moment, on our planet, out of the 7+ billion people, that really there's only about 3% that are at the level of consciousness that you and I and we are, that are opening up to a spiritual truth, that there is a soul progression, that is life after death, that we are more than just our physical body, that we are more than our thoughts, that there's something greater within us all. So less than 3%. Still leaves 97% of people out there that are still in the process of coming to an awakening. And so today Spirit wanted me to really just share with you 3 keys to help you on your journey. So before I do that, would that be okay? Just give me a yes in the chat, give me a hello, a nod, give me a wave with your emojis. Just let me know you're with me. Good. And I want you to say, and you can say this out loud because you're home alone like me, you can say, I'm ready to open the door. I want to hear you. Come on. I'm ready to open the door. To open the door to your highest truths. To open the door to something greater. So here are the 3 keys that Spirit wanted me to share today. The first one, I believe, is that we all need to connect with an element of spiritual trust. Everybody say out loud, spiritual trust. And even though I can't hear you, I believe you. Okay? So what is trust? Trust is coming to the place of knowing. It's coming to that sense I mentioned before, when something resonates so strongly in you, you just know. In psychic spiritual circles, we call it claircognizance, that true knowing, that true understanding. And I believe we're all being called to this place of coming to an understanding of what is truth for us, what is true knowing for ourselves. Many years ago, when I started first as a medium and psychic, and I was doing clairvoyant readings, and I was travelling around, as we do, to a lot of the psychic fairs, and you would sit there and people would come. And a lot of people who would come, especially young girls, young ladies, would want to know about their relationship. Tell me about my relationship. When is Mr. Right coming? When should I leave? I'm in a relationship. Should I stay? Should I go? Has anybody ever been to a reading and heard these sort of things? Yeah. But when I sat there and I tuned into the energy of that soul and that person in front of me, I can tell you now that nearly all of them, I'd say a good 97%, already knew the answer themselves. They already knew. So why did they come for a reading? Why do we go for readings? Is it because we just are wanting confirmation of what we already know within us? So Spirit are guiding us today to come to that place of knowing, to find that within ourselves, to know there is always a part of you that knows. And if you were to give yourself space and time to trust that, what would happen? The challenge is we have to act on that knowing. How many of us know we have to act on the knowing? Yeah, because if we don't act on the knowing start receding. Okay? So, an example of this was, many years ago, I was working in IT. This was before my spiritual journey. And I was doing really well. I had been promoted, had several different jobs. I was working in a grade role. This was in the early 90s. And some friends came to me and said, Les, we're leaving our jobs. We're going to England. We want to travel around and backpack. Do you want to come with us? And there was a part of my soul, as soon as they said that, that lit up. I'd been wanting to do that for 5 years. But I was in a new job. I was getting paid lots of money. I'd just been given responsibility of a team. But as I went for a walk along the beach that day, something inside of me just came through and said, you know. you have to go. You have to do this to fulfill your own heart and soul. And the moment of making that choice, I was led on a journey that, took me around Europe, helped me to travel. There was 6 years I spent overseas, and it was the most amazing time of my life. So true knowing, divine trust, we all have to come to this place. The second key is what I like to call spiritual discernment. So you may want to write that down, spiritual discernment. And on this spiritual path, discernment is something that we all are needing. How many of us know, just from the media, what we hear, all the stories around, there's a lot of untruth in the world? How many of us know this? Yeah. We just have to look at the quarantine inquiry, and I'm not going to go there today, but if you just look at what's coming out of that. But a lot of us also know there is truth. And what I love about the spiritualist philosophy is that we say, come to spiritualism, try things on. We're not here to tell you what to believe. But each person needs to come to that element of finding their own truth. And that's a great way of being, because I believe the Spirit are calling us back to find that strength in ourselves. And, if we really look at this in terms of spiritual discernment, it comes up in different places. Years ago, when I first started my spiritual journey, I became a hypnotherapist. But one of the things I never believed in before that time was in past lives. Does anybody here believe in past lives? Just give me a hand wave. Yeah? Fantastic. Anybody coming back from a past life just to be here today? Many of you. So look, past lives, I never believed. I was so left brain coming from the IT industry. And I had this amazing teacher who used to do at that time. He used to do past life regressions with 600 people in a big auditorium. He would take them back and regress them back to certain points in time, get them to remember their life journeys and gather evidence. And then he would take that evidence and physically look for it in the real world. Street names in England, which people had lived in past lives. Places in Egypt that people had been entombed. He would go back to find the connections. And that time of those 2-3 years of studying this work, it opened me up to, hey, there's a lot more than this life. But I had to have my own experience of that. And that took place in those early days. A good friend of mine and colleague did a regression on me. And I went back to a life in France where I was a peasant. I'd stolen chickens. So if you've got chickens at home, just keep them away from me, okay? But I'd stolen chickens. And I got caught because I was there to feed my family. I was desperate for money. I was desperate for something. And as soon as they took me into this courtyard in this little village in France, I'm there in the stocks, about to be beheaded, and all that was coming out of my mouth was fluent French. And I swear, when I listen to the recording, I go, where does that come from? Because I never studied French in this life. And yet all that came out in that regression was fluent French. And I thought, there's something here. It kind of started to build that level of truth. But what I'd like to share with you about discernment is this. And I'll give you an example. It was from a class of mine, a development class this week. And one of the students in my class, she brought up the whole topic. She said, Les, the other day I pulled out my angel cards and I started to do an angel reading and I was really happy. But the next day I received a message on social media from Doreen Virtue that just renounced all of angel cards and all of divination and all of that. She said, what's the truth? And at the same time, the next day, she sent me a picture, which was a post from Doreen Virtues. And, Doreen's gone through a huge transformation. God bless her, and good luck with whatever's happening there. But the energy of what she sent through, when I looked at it straight away, I thought, how could a loving God, a loving creator, a loving energy of the universe send this and be sharing this fear in the world? I thought, there's something not right here. It didn't resonate with me. I deleted the images, deleted the posts. It's not mine. I rang this friend and I said to her, what's your truth? What do you believe about it? And she said, I believe that my cards and the things I do, my angel readings, are from the light, that they work with the angelic realm. And I said, well, if that's your truth, and what do you feel as soon as you saw that post and that image of what was sent? She said, it depleted my energy. It took away all power from me. And I said to her, this is discernment. knowing what is right for our spirit and soul, knowing what zaps our energy. And we need to make that choice for ourselves. Because sometimes we have people in our lives, we have events in our lives that will try and zap some of that presence and power. So are you ready to step into spiritual discernment? Just give me a head nod. Yeah. If you are, I'd like you to take your finger, your index finger on your right hand. Just everybody take your finger up like this. I want you to put it on your shoulder, and it's almost like you're going to switch on discernment. You're going to pull down and turn the switch on. Can everybody do that? And now I'm just going to ask you this. Are you feeling turned on? A few of you are smiling. That's good. So look, the very last thing I'd like to share here, the third key that I've felt Spirit give me today, is about stepping into your spiritual power. You know, for years, we've had institutions, religions, organisations who have tried to limit the human spirit. It's really only been only these last 100, 200 years that we've been awakening to find our own power, to understand that maybe the presence of God is not out there, but it's within us. Maybe that, you know, the rules and regulations that try to keep us limited is because people are afraid of our own power and what we might step into. During the week, and any of you who've got Foxtel or have connected with BBC TV, there was a great series, and it caught my eye because it was by a lady called Sue Perkins. And she lost her father 6 months ago and decided to go on a pilgrimage to, of all places, India. And she decided to start by journeying down the Ganges, the Mother Ganges, which is the goddess energy in India of the river. So she went to the Himalayas and she started to follow the path to the source. And as she's travelling up in these Himalayas, it was taking me back to Rishikesh, taking me back to all those places she travelled through. But she went to the source. And I'm wondering what it's like when we take time to go to our source. Because when we go to the source, it's where we find our truth. When we go to the source, we strip away all the noise and we find that connection with ourselves. When we go to the source, we step into our true power. Many spiritualists believe that we should be taking time to sit in the power, to just take time to sit in silence and allow spiritual energy to fill us. And I feel that's what Spirit is guiding us back to. In this lockdown period, we've had plenty of time, but have we taken time to go back to source, to strip away everything and allow ourselves to be filled? And there's something powerful that happens in this source, and I'm just going to share this little quote of, if I finish, about Swami Sivananda. He said, you know, a desire arises in the mind, and the moment that desire is satisfied, another desire comes. And in the interval that separates one desire from another, there is a momentary space of silence. And in that interval of stepping in between where there is no thought, no love, no hate, there is simply a moment of freedom. There's complete peace that reigns between the mental realm. So take time this week to just see, how do I step into the gap, step into that space and allow that presence to support me. So to finish up here today, I was just reminded of a young gentleman in 1745 who went off in the British Navy. He went to sail ships to the Caribbean, to Africa, and found himself as a sailor on these ships and eventually a captain, transporting slaves from England to America and to England. And it was only after many years of sitting with his unrest in his soul and spirit, he had his own spiritual awakening. And it was almost in that moment he had an opening of grace. Everybody say grace. Grace is this universal energy that we all have aspects to, that we all have access as well. But in that moment, he stepped into divine trust. He stepped into divine knowing. He stepped into his own divine power and realized that he couldn't keep doing his life the way he did. And so he converted and he became a priest, a clergyman. He went on to write many different songs and poems. One of the ones he wrote said, you know, I once was lost, but now I'm found. And it was grace that, led his heart, not only from fear, but grace that allowed him to be free. And we all know this song, Amazing Grace. But in that moment, he had a shift. So I feel today, just as I finish, maybe just take a moment and close your eyes. And let us just ask that we step into divine grace. Let us ask that we would be guided today to know our truth. While we may not have a guidebook for this life, we are always being guided. Our soul has a purpose and a pathway. So just ask that your ears would be open to hearing divine grace, that your heart would be open to following, and that most of all, that you would have the courage to step into something greater. Because as Spirit would say, you're loved and you are loved. So thank you very much for joining me here today. Thank you.